It is Monday, Mr. Jones. You're my co-host. How are you?
I am well, thank you. How are you?
Good. So, interesting thing happened in Atlanta last week. It like snowed
For the second time in a month.
for the second time in a
That just
month.
never
So,
happens.
what does that mean for the real estate market? Do you think it? I have a weird opinion, but I'm curious yours.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, I think you broke up for a minute. What does that mean? What does it mean for the real estate market when it snows?
I mean, a lot of stuff comes to a halt. Most people aren't able to go out and look at property when that's happening. So, I think the conventional wisdom is that people aren't looking at homes during that time. But I've talked to a bunch of agents that went under contract during the snowstorm.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think it may have slowed down the showings, obviously. But I think when people are home away from work, they tend to go online and look at real estate sometimes, or
Yeah,
when you're we kind of saw this during the pandemic, right? Like all of a sudden people were spending more time than they normally do at home, and it
right.
like, oh, hey, I want to, what does it look to remodel my kitchen? What does it look to just move?
Right. It highlights what isn't working in your home because you're spending more time there and you're trying to work from home. So if you're not set up to do that, it brings it to light.
Yeah. Anyway, I thought it was interesting because, calendar, obviously, holidays. We had a holiday Monday, Martin Luther King Day last
Right.
week. And then the city uh jokingly will shut down if there's a millimeter of snow on the ground, right? Like
It will. Yeah.
but I do think I don't it may temporarily disrupt the industry, but I actually think it could be a good thing.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, like I said, it doesn't seem to have slowed actual business.
No, not at all. But we'll see in the numbers here. Let's jump there.
Okay.
Uh, all right. Well, Fulton County uh, had a little dip in new active listings going on the market. Maybe you could call that snow.
Yeah. Could
Maybe
be.
you could call it last week of the month. People are waiting on February 1st. Uh,
Right.
but by and large, Mark, 748 new active inventory hitting the market is a
Right.
big number. We didn't even see those numbers in December, right?
Yeah.
So I will take that as a spring market ramp up.
Yep.
121 said yes, in spite of the snow.
Hmm.
So if you just look, one of the things that we're keeping our eye on is how fast the market starting in 2025. And you saw that first week, 69 went under contract, then 95, then 100, then 121. I could almost be confident in saying it's heating up fast.
Yeah, for sure. The old seasonality was usually after January 15th, the market and people are, no longer focused on the holidays and all of that stuff and getting caught up at work. That's when the market usually starts to pick up is the middle of January. So I think it's a little bit late this year, but it's getting there.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen some years though, Mark, in contrast that it didn't pick up till late February.
Hmm.
So I'll take a late January pickup all day long.
Absolutely.
And I had an interesting question asked of me this week, and
Okay.
I want to propose it to the conversation, and it's specific to this. The gentleman asked me, he said, Brett, how do I focus? Obviously, I want to focus on my long-term success. He said, but my pipeline is really thin right now in January, and my initial short-term focus has some, you could throw the word anxiety or concern or that kind of emotion into the conversation. And my answer surprised me, and I want to hear your answer. But my answer was, hey, look, if you remember back when you got into real estate, you had zero pipeline. And
Right.
all you're doing is telling you, do these activities, trust these activities, it will happen, it will build. And at that time, you believed in it and you had faith and you did the activities and the results would come. Yet, if we've been in the industry for any length of time, I call it the December, January freak out, right? Like obviously that's when agents' business are typically the slowest if you just look in historic trends. Yet you
Right.
still have to have faith in the activities and believe that the pipeline is coming. And that's why I think this conversation around that spring market buildup is a really important one because it's hard to see the forest through the trees, or it's hard to see the lead generation you're doing now, knowing, hey, my business might be a little slower because it's January, but I do trust that come February, come March, I won't have that same emotion. And
Yeah.
it's honestly, it's just a trust in the activities was my answer. But do you have anything you'd add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're dead on with the answer. I think the only other thing I would add is I would ask that person to look back 30, 60, 90 days and what types of activity had they been doing and had it slowed down at all. Because I think what you would probably see is a slowdown in activity, which is now starting to be felt. And that's a typical thing that happens in real estate, and why we tell people over the holidays to make sure that you're using that time effectively to generate leads and touch your clients
Yeah,
for
good
the
point.
next quarter.
Well, what was happening 60, 90 days ago was an election.
An election,
And I think a lot of people
holidays, like it
felt,
was like one thing after the next. And I think we saw a lot of people that probably should have remained in touch with their clients, sort of take their foot off the gas. And if you did, you're probably going to start feeling it about right now.
yeah, good perspective. But I still think it's a trust in going forward.
Absolutely. I mean, the activities always yield results. Sometimes you need to do more of the activities, but at the end of the day, it's the same activities that always bring the results. It's being in relationship with your clients.
There you go. Predictions. We've been on these calls every year in the month of January and talked about predictions. Some have held true, some have not. Um, Full disclosure. But the predictions right now is coming off 2024, which by and large was the lowest year in home sales in almost 30 years, which sounds
Right.
like devastating news, yet we're all here today as survivors and still in the game, right? Like, I mean,
Right.
that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Yet the predictions are saying that the home sales in 2025 should be greater than they were in 2024 and greater than what came out in 2023. So we should have a
Hmm.
much better year in terms of home sales. And the phrase I keep using is we're probably going to have a boring normal year, meaning no NAR settlement, no changes in interest rates, no,
No pandemics. No.
yeah, which is good. We want
Yeah.
a boring normal year. It will be refreshing to have a normal year. We haven't had one in quite a while.
Yeah, for sure. Just
Yeah.
as we were starting to normalize the pandemic, um, the Ukraine got invaded, so that shifted a whole lot of economic things for our market.
Yeah. And we should take a minute and mention, and Luke, if you're on here, if you can drop the information in the chat, the we're going to do a giant state of the industry presentation on Thursday at the Epicurean Hotel there in Midtown, which is beautiful. But we've been preparing for it and a lot of really good insights into the statistics. We're going to deep dive into the expired listing section. I think there's some really interesting perspectives on that. We're certainly going to dive into what the predictions are and the home sales, and we're going to dive into predictions around interest rates. And uh, there was supposed to be a big legal thing that was supposed to go down today around changes on the TCPA. Yet we heard at the nth hour they might have made some changes to that. We're going to spell all that out on Thursday. So I want to make sure, obviously, if you're on this call, you're in tune with statistics and our industry, and you absolutely need to be there Thursday. So Luke dropped it in the chat. But anyway, let's keep going. All right, we only got to one number. Mark. We got all right. So 121 went under contract, big number.
Right,
216 pending, really healthy number for January.
for
And then
sure.
129 closed out in the last 7 days, 139 the week before. Not big numbers, but remember, these were houses that went under contract in December.
I was gonna say, right,
Yeah,
exactly.
so I'm expecting a bump next week,
Yeah,
end of the month. But really, we're looking at the leading indicators going into February here.
right.
DeKalb County, little backwards movement on new active inventory hitting the market, 478, but that's still a big number for
Mhm.
DeKalb County. If you just kind of look, we have to go, there was a 500 in December, but most of the weeks were 300, 200. So I'll take 478 all day long in DeKalb. 80 went under contract. Same story. Look at the ramp up happening in that spring market with 145 pending. Great number. Same story. 79 closed out last 7 days, 78 the week before. These are a little low, but those are old business. We'll see what it looks like going forward.
Mhm. Well, and
And
this is the last week
other
of the month, so we should see a lot of closings this week.
absolutely. 409 in Cobb, little dip from last week, but still a big number. 92 active under contract. I mean, these are all the same story, right? Like there's no outlier here. 135 pending. Uh, really good number for pending in Cobb County with 93 and 84, which they had bigger numbers at the beginning of the month. We'll see a
Sure.
big pop at the end of the month
Yeah.
here. Any thoughts on the numbers before we move forward?
Yeah, just that, there's always a big chunk of properties that don't close at the end of December that close in the, first 2 weeks of January. So I'm not surprised to see that those big bumps in the numbers in the first 2 weeks of January, but I think you'll see a really big chunk at the end of January.
All right. So, Mark, I've asked you a question.
Yes.
Are interest rates a factor right now?
If you let it be, it is. But honestly, like I have agents that have had their best year ever in the past 12 months. So I think it's what you make of it. But yes, I think for the industry, it's an issue.
I think it's an issue, but I would say I don't think people are as sensitive to the mortgage rates today as they might have been in a year ago.
They're definitely more used to it. The sticker shock is gone.
The sticker shock is gone. And the reason I asked that, I'll put it up here, the rates went up to 7.1. And
Hmm.
if I was on this call 6 months ago, I probably would have been saying, oh man, we need to get it under 7%. Everything changes once it's under 7%. I don't think that's even affecting the spring market right now. I think people are just pretty much, it is what it is. I expect it to come down. I think it's a little inflated right now because of some of the economic political conversations going on, but
Right.
it'll come back down. And I think people are still getting sixes on their locks. It's
Yeah.
just this is what the Mortgage News Daily is quoting, right?
Yeah. It's always a little bit high.
Yeah, but I don't think it's as sensitive as it was in the past. And I think that's,
Definitely. People are starting to get used to the idea of a 6 to 7% mortgage.
yep. So Inman is having their conference in New York City right now. So a couple of these headlines are coming out of that conference. But Brad Inman proclaims real estate agents the champions of the world, which okay, he always is good with his headlines. However,
Right.
it kind of speaks to what you and I were talking about is following a tough year of commission lawsuits and a challenging housing market. Brad reminds real estate professionals Thursday that they are survivors poised for a rebirth. I 100% agree with that. Like,
For sure.
look, I mean, right or wrong, we've had some rough couple years in the real estate industry. And if what I believe of a boring normal year with increased home sales is upon us, uh, we survived the worst of the worst, and life is good moving forward. And we're going to spell
Agreed.
that out even more on Thursday, right?
Yep.
Anything you'd add?
No, I mean, I think you nailed it. People have gotten through the worst of it. We're on the way back up. We've hit bottom, and hopefully, it'll be kind of an uneventful year.
Yeah. And headline hit this last week that Mark Willis stepped down as our CEO.
Right.
Um, I think this turns out to be a good thing, both for Mark personally. I was texting with him, and his passion around making a difference for agents, making a difference for leaders, versus being the CEO of our company, which, I mean, here's a guy that reset our company and took us through probably one of the toughest years in real estate. And I mean, he wants to go spend time in his passion,
Right.
and I think that's a good thing. It also gives our company an opportunity as we're moving forward into this rebirth or reset, uh, to maybe find the next CEO that will guide us through that. And I think that's a good thing. I don't think it changes the ground game at all. It's just a headline. I thought it was worthy of a mention.
Yeah, I think people like to put a lot of drama behind changes in leadership, but the reality is every market requires a different leader, and sometimes the leader that's in place can adapt to that market, and sometimes a new leader is needed, and sometimes leaders come aboard with an agenda to take over the role now, but they're long term they want something else, and this is something that he's wanted for a long time.
Yeah. You mean we're all replaceable, Mark?
I think we all have value, Brett, and
We'll leave
and
it
I
there.
think that if one of us leaves, the world will go on.
It's we hate to admit it, but it's probably very true. All
Yes.
right. I don't want to get in the weeds on this, but I thought this was an interesting perspective, and I'll do my best to explain it. This was a panel that happened at Inman, and the real estate lawyers it says they're taking a big stand against agent commission sharing. So here's what they mean by that is when in the past I would list a house, create a relationship with the seller, charge them X percent, and inside my X percent, I would share my commission with the buyer's agent.
Right.
And that's really what the practice of yesterday is. I know there are some agents that are still trying to operate their business that way, but what they're saying is to stay in compliance and stay in the evolution of the industry. What happens is I contract with a seller to pay me, and then we agree that the seller will contract with said buyer's agent to pay buyer's agent commission, direct from seller, not as part of me sharing my commission.
Right.
And I agree with that. I understand it. It's separated it. I think most of our agents are practicing this way right now, but the lawyers are saying, hey, look, if you're not practicing this way, that's what the legal community wants to attack. So you probably should figure out how to start or
Well,
evolve your practice.
at the end of the day, it's semantics, right? Because the sellers always paid it. It's just,
Yeah,
did it go through an agent or not, another brokerage or not to get to you? And I've been saying for months since this news came out about the commission changes that I'm recommending people go with this model of not sharing and having the seller pay the buyer's broker directly, because other companies have made that a policy, and a lot of legal experts out there have said that this is the way to go to avoid future lawsuits.
yeah. So it's worthy of a mention. I do think we're past all the NAR settlement stuff, but I think there's still some business practices that maybe are lingering, and we need to probably just tighten it up in the future.
Yep.
All right, this one's fun. So here, AI keeps evolving, and I want to have a out of left field wild conversation with you, Mark.
Cool.
Think back a couple years back. What was the most number of offers you heard somebody receive on a listing?
The most numbers, I remember one in the 70s, like 72 or something like that,
Oh my
in
God.
2021.
So think if we had the AI we have today at that time, and if that agent had uploaded those 70 offers into AI and let AI analyze the offers to put a summary together of uh, the different points and which offer probably was most advantageous for the seller, and then took that research to the seller instead of going, here's your 70 offers and here's my 50-page spreadsheet I put together. Uh, I think AI would have been an interesting tool at that time.
Hmm.
Going forward, um, I think what I'm starting to read or see is that AI has these reasoning models. And do I see AI maybe being a contributing factor in doing a CMA in the future? I do. Do
Absolutely.
I see AI being a contributing factor of, hey, here's the chart master stats. We're going to make an offer on this listing. What would you recommend to be a competitive offer? And AI spitting out saying, hey, the average home in this neighborhood is selling at 96.3% of original list price. Here could be a competitive offer to start with. And we've never really had that. We just, I mean, how have you trained agents in the past how to be competitive in offers?
How have we trained them?
Yeah, how have you trained agents in the past?
I mean, to be competitive and make an offer, it was about, making sure that your offer was as clean as possible, that it was providing the seller with as many of their must-haves as possible, and making the listing agent feel comfortable that it was going to actually close.
Yeah. And how would you advise around what sales price to offer?
I mean, it depends on the situation. I mean, that's
Yeah,
a variable because it depends on how many offers they have, whether they're competing or not. If they're not competing, and it depends on the market. It's right now,
100%.
right now it's not a huge competitive market, but there's still probably 27% of homes are competing. So
Yeah.
it really is specific to the property.
But I think it's still in infant stages,
Oh yeah,
but I can see AI becoming a strategic partner in both those conversations.
for sure.
Uh, Around pricing on the listing side, around competitive offering on the buyer side.
Hmm.
Uh, I just think it's going to keep evolving, and it'll be quite interesting. I know it's out of left field, but I
No,
don't
I
think
think
I'm
I think it's great. And I
crazy.
think there'll be an opportunity too to train AI on your particular market. So I think at some point it'll be evolved enough that we can not only feed it the stats, but we can give it market specific information and it'll help. But I do think there are so many variables that, when something's more of an art than a science, you'd have to come up with a complicated scoring system to be able to replicate that on a machine level.
There you go. So a couple questions in the chat where Cheryl asked, can we give a brief comparison to how January numbers fare compared to March, April 2024 for those sellers wanting to wait? Cheryl, I will do that analysis and make sure we have it Thursday. Vicky said, I think people were expecting home prices to come down. And when that didn't happen, they're reconsidering the whole interest rate conversation.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think prices are coming down. And the factor of the purchase price versus interest rate speaks into affordability. People are wanting something to save them, whether it's prices to come down or interest rates to come down. And
Right.
the problem is the lost opportunity cost is hurting them worse than them waiting on something to save them, whether pricing or interest rates. It's just
Right. Their access and affordability is going down as time goes on. So they have to shift their thinking from getting it cheaper, whether it's monthly payment cheaper or purchase price cheaper, to getting the property before it gets more expensive.
yeah. She said, I heard there's a lawsuit brewing out there with buyers and agent compensation. There's always something brewing. I don't think it's anything coming heavy at our industry right now. All right, two other quick articles. One I want to spend some time on, one I just want to make mention of. One is insurance costs.
Mm,
Uh, they're not going down, guys. And here's the reality is, while the fires in LA are in LA, it's the same insurance carriers that we use. And
hmm.
they're probably going to experience some significant losses. And they spread their loss across the country, not just areas specific. And I believe that insurance is just a factor that's high right now, and it's probably going to stay high, in my opinion. Um,
Hmm.
but Mark, here's the fun article. So it says millennials are desperate for affordable homes, are willing to make some surprising concessions.
Yeah, this was an interesting article.
So, we've talked about, like, I don't know if I've had this conversation with you specifically, Mark, but I remember the first house I bought, like it was a dog. I had to go in and remodel it, but I was just happy to own a house, right?
Hmm.
And I think the HGTV world has created unrealistic expectations
Yep.
of buyers. And I think that's on us. We've got to help reset expectations of, hey, it's more important that you get into a house and into the game of owning real estate than having a showpiece day one. You can remodel it as you go, one. And what
Right.
this is saying is few millennials believe their generation can afford a home, and some are so desperate for an affordable purchase, they're willing to buy a home with some serious defects. I was like, I
Hmm.
bought a house that needed uh remodel, right? And
Hmm.
but here's where it gets really interesting. Oh, I'm trying to highlight. Uh, According to a new survey of millennials, 21% of millennials believe their generation can afford to buy a home, a substantial decline from 52% who said they could early 2024. So
Hmm.
only 20% of that generation believes they can afford it.
Right.
First of all, afford what? Everybody can afford something. It's just whether that expectation of what they want versus what they can afford line up. That's
Right.
on us, right? And then it
Hmm.
says, additionally, 96% of respondents said they have concerns about purchasing a home, with 44% saying they're worried about finding an affordable home, up from 35% in 2024. What do you think, Mark?
I mean, I think it's dead on. I think there's a lot of people out there that have, especially millennials, who are looking at getting into their first home and realizing it's getting less and less achievable from their perspective as time goes on. They're watching the rates go up, they're watching the prices go up, and they're not catching a break.
But don't you think that's on us in educating and helping set expectations?
Absolutely. I mean, I think you're right about HGTV, and I would also add Instagram is
Yeah.
another culprit in creating the desire to have something perfect day one. And I think we need to help buyers shift their mindset. When I started buying my first home, I looked for something that I could add value to, that I could put some sweat equity in, and have a better investment because it wasn't completely finished. And that's what I think the opportunity is for a lot of these home buyers.
You know, yeah, the stat that gives me anxiety is the one that says the average first-time homebuyer age right now is 38 years old, which is
Mm,
100% millennial.
yeah,
Um, and I think I bought my first house when I was 26 or 27 years old, right?
same. Yep.
Um, and I just think, okay, I get that it's a theme in the industry, but I also think we have some responsibility inside of that conversation and inside of those statistics to
Hmm.
educate and set better expectations.
Yeah. Well, you have to also remember that if you're 38 years old, um, in 2008, that was what, 16 years ago. So you were what, 18, or 20, 22. So you were a young adult watching what was happening with the market crashing. in 2008. So I think there's a lot of people that they grew up thinking as it went up, it would come back down. And it will, but will it come back down the way it did in 2008? That was a once in a lifetime economic, uh, situation. So
Yeah.
maybe not. And I think there's a lot of people that had that expectation and now are realizing like I may be in my 60s before that happens.
We've got to we got to do a better job educating. One of the things that I would love to challenge agents around is, hey, who are the 12 people in your sphere of influence that should be buying their first house in 2025? Is it the kids of people that are in your database? Is it go try to identify 12 people that need to buy their first house and take them on the journey. Show them the
Right.
possibilities, show them how to set expectations around what's realistic for them. Show them how, if they were to buy a house that wasn't perfect, and over the next 2, 3 years renovated that house, how much equity that puts in their pocket, right? You got
Right.
to do a little educating. We
Yeah.
were moving so fast that we stopped educating, and I think we need to get back to educating.
Well, and to be fair, it's also hard to educate a public that's being educated at an exponential rate by social media and television.
100%. You mean all the pretty pictures we post on Instagram aren't 100% reality?
Right? Like they'll post their pretty living room, but they don't show you the bathroom looks like hell.
There you go. All right. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Tell your friends. We think this is one of the most important conversations we have every week. So have a good Monday, guys.
Thanks, Brett.